Well, welcome everybody back to Moving Beyond Trauma. I am beyond delighted today to have Dina Grishin with me, who is, I'll tell you all about her in a second. She's a life vision and career direction coach. And she's got so much more to her than a title or a label. I met Dina doing the same master's program, positive psychology and coaching psychology. But I fell in love with your work when you began to tell me all about the hero's journey, which is the Joseph Campbell stuff. And it's like Jungian, and it's all these really cool ways of understanding our challenges that present to us in life, whether it's career or relationships, or frankly, any other thing that is happening. And so when I had the idea to have this podcast, you sprang immediately to mind. I just love that you're here. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be invited. And yes, we had the hero's journey. I remember it was, I think, in lockdown. I did that first webinar and then we went on and so to work together. It's just such a fascinating story that I'm more than happy to go on and hop and talk about that as well. But yeah, I'll jump in to introduce myself.
Yes, I was going to say, how would you, because I just said the life coach thing, but how would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I don't know about you, but your elevator pitch changes and evolves as you find better ways to explain what you do. So my introduction changes every time, but basically I'm a life and career coach and I help people with career clarity. And under that comes career change is one of the main things that I work with people on. But it doesn't always have to be. People come to me when they're feeling a bit stuck. Something's off. They're not enjoying work, or they don't have a plan and they feel restless about it. So we work together, have a clarity process that I take them through, and we work together to kind of just give them a plan of like what to do. Because the plan could be stay in the job and then do something in a bit, or change things in life. But it could be, change jobs. So that's one element of what I do. And that in that bracket, I work with, full-timers, part-timers coming back from work, recently redundant, also freelancers wanting to go back to work as well. Sometimes that happens. So that's all under the career clarity, career change bracket. And then I also work with small business owners and self-employed creatives who don't want to change jobs. They just want to work on themselves because they know the more they work on themselves, the better they show up in business, and the better work goes, the better everything goes. So those are my two strands.
Oh, I love it. I think having done career changes myself, having been through trauma myself, and having been set up my own business myself, when I first heard of the hero's journey and the different steps, which I know you're going to lead us through, teach us some of the steps, it made so much sense to me. It's like there is the call to adventure that I felt inside of me each time, and sometimes I didn't want it. It was like, oh no, I can't believe this is happening right now. And other times I couldn't wait to get out of a sticky or stuck situation and to move on. So this there's so much like practical, applied, vibrant, real life stuff in this model. So I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always say, like, when something's made for you, it kind of comes round. And this is also what we'll cover in the hero's journey. It's like you always get that call and sometimes you ignore it. And I actually had this call to the hero's journey for a while. Like, I kept hearing about the hero's journey for ages, and I didn't actually investigate it because I thought, well, I know what a hero is, I know what a journey is, I get it. And then I don't know what happened, but one day I was like, I would just look into this. And that's when I looked into it, found the book, and then just kind of inhaled everything to do about Joseph Campbell, who's the author of the book. And I realized that it's so much more than just a story arc or, a template. It is kind of your roadmap to self-actualization. And what gave me even more goosebumps was the fact that you can apply it to people who want to change careers. You can apply it also to creatives, because they are also on this quest in the unknown, and just a creative process. You can also apply it to anyone deciding to start their own business or going into self-employment. And you can also apply it to marketing when you're already in business, because it's storytelling. And there's just so many different applications and coming out of one kind of journey, one story.
I really love that. Especially, I think, like I'm of a certain age where when we left school, everybody went and got a job, and it was very straightforward, and we didn't even have the internet and all that stuff. But meeting the kids now that are coming out of school and going through university, and some of my clients are actually like this really, 21, 22. And the world is so different for them. Like, this opportunity to evolve and to grow and to meet the challenges and to develop yourself as a person is so different now. They don't have to fit into one job description or describe themselves by one label like that. So it's I think really relevant to how the world is changing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes, we'll get onto that as well. But I'm sure people of our age as well will know how to, the different, when you go out and you're just following the status quo, what everyone does. And then when you're in the status quo, then leaving it is actually quite scary.
Yeah, that's where I totally identify with it. And I think we were chatting earlier, I think we're going to try and do 2 episodes of this, just so that to kind of break it up a little bit. And I think, like, the way that this, to make it as practical and useful as possible for wherever you're at. So the listeners, as you're listening to this from wherever you're at in all this multitude of different journeys that we've already described, like, you just should hopefully be able to pull out of this, like, really could jump in and out of the podcast episodes at either stage and just find something we hope that will be really of help to you.
Absolutely, yeah, because it's a biggie. It's a biggie.
Yeah, we're kind of like, how are we going to eat this elephant? So where should we start?
Let's start with Joseph Campbell, who wrote it. I think really important to kind of get the background of how this happened, because Joseph Campbell wrote The Hero's Journey, and the original book was called The Hero with 1,000 Faces. But he wasn't into heroes in particular. He wasn't like a mad hero fan. He actually had kind of a start to life that I identify, maybe your listeners will as well, where he didn't really know what he wanted to do in life. All he knew was that he liked studying. So he just carried on studying, and he's got so many qualifications. And what he did with his studies, he just followed what interested him, followed his bliss. So he really got into stories, folklore, and then followed that into myths, religions, and just basically kept on reading for ages and ages. He didn't know what he was doing with that information. And I think that kind of really relates to my self-employed creative clients who are just kind of following the bliss of their creative work, and they don't know what they're doing. And that's why I think the hero's journey will really help them as well, because they're like, you don't need to. Like Joseph says, follow your bliss, and the universe will open doors where there were only walls. And he is a living and breathing example of that, which is why. So
I'm already going like, wow, because it's so like, oh, so you don't need to, because the whole thing of a journey is you wouldn't want to assume you know where you're going. Like, so you don't have to know where you're going.
No. And this is, we'll talk about the 12 steps. Like, you just have a roadmap, or you can expect these, these people on the way, or these situations on the way, but you don't have to know where you're going. And that's a really good point. It's like, I think we all want some kind of guidance, and what Joseph Campbell says is like, your guidance is internal. And that is what I kind of also work with clients. It's not on my website, this part, but a lot of the time I work with clients to get back to their intuition and listening to their head quite a lot. And that's why when they come to me and they're like, I don't know what to do. And they're also quite bewildered, like, how come I don't know what to do? I should know. But it's because they have lost touch with their intuition. And, Joseph Campbell's very simple advice is follow your bliss, which is good. But then this is kind of work I do also. It's just, what is your bliss? How do we know what the bliss is? Getting in touch with that.
It's simultaneously a roadmap to actualization, and that where like you're following your bliss. So okay.
So the bliss is actually Campbell's thing. Campbell's kind of take on it. He's one of those quotes that he's got. So Campbell noticed the same kind of story arc that kept on coming up in all these stories that he read. And it was 3 scenes: the separation, the initiation, and the return. And where I always kind of say, really, really simple. Most people have watched Finding Nemo, and you can see that's exactly that story arc: the separation, initiation, and a return. So he saw that there was 3 scenes, and within it there were 12 steps that kept on coming out again. And so he wrote out those steps. But what he wondered was, how come these stories keep being repeated, and they're just repeated across, generations, across countries in different languages who wouldn't have spoken to each other? Why are they just, laboring the point? And so he wanted to find an answer to that question, and he looked around and he found those answers within Jung, in particular, Carl Jung. He found it within Jung's process of individuation, his theory of individuation. And so this is probably the bit where I should tell you what the hero's journey is. So the hero's journey is 12 steps, and it is, I'll go through them. It is status quo, so the ordinary world, step 1. Step 2, call to adventure. Then it's the refusal of the call, meeting the mentor. Then crossing the threshold, which is when we go into our initiation. Then it's tests, allies, enemies, approach to the inmost cave. The ordeal, step 8. Reward, seizing the sword. The road back, this is when we go into the journey. And then resurrection and return with the elixir. So these are the steps, leaving. And what he found in Jung's kind of theory of individuation was an explanation. Jung basically said that we as humans have a very long time with our parents when we grow up. Mammals, anyone else, like how much time do they spend with their young? Weeks, months, like the top is probably the elephant, which is 22 months, but that's it. Whereas we're with our parents for up to 16, or maybe some are even older. So during that time, we get modeled a lot of information, and the society, about how to be in society as well. We're told what to do and other things like that. And so we have a social self. We behave, we do as we're told, we fit in society, there's rules, we do this, we don't do that. And Jung says, in order to actually kind of self-actualize and to become the person who we want to be and who we are, to find our true selves, we have to leave kind of physically, mentally, or psychologically, all 3 or one of them, leave our known world, which is our parents, maybe our society, leave, confront our true selves, and then return and integrate our social selves with our true selves. And the return is actually quite key. And Campbell says it's actually the hardest point, but the return is key, that integration. And we all know some people who have gone off on their eternal gap year and have never come back. They found themselves, and like, I'm going to find myself, and they found themselves, but they're still there and they haven't come back. And integration is one of the key moments of that. Thanks.
Wow, cool. I was just thinking we can put links or images and stuff into the show notes. So anything like any visual, because I know this is actually, for me, is a super visual thing, which is kind of funny to talk about on podcast. So we can put that into the show notes so that people can see where you're at in the journey. And remember you showing me before once, there's like a line across the middle where some of it's conscious and some, what's that, or where does that fit in? Or
so which you'll see if you just put in the hero's journey in images, and everyone will see the kind of 12 steps. It's like the ordinary. If we think about it in a film world, it's the setting is in an ordinary world. Say, for example, Harry Potter, he's in that ordinary world, and then when he goes on his initiation, he's in the special world. That's that part, and then they go back and returns to the ordinary world. So what we do is when we go into the special world, where that initiation bit, that is when we go. The ordeal is always going into the belly of the whale. That is when we go into, our subconscious, and when we confront our biggest fears, really. So that's what's happening there.
So that's going, so the inner journey is like going into your subconscious, going into the things you don't know about yourself, the parts of your mind that are more difficult to access. Whereas, because we're trying not, for myself, I always try not to jargon this as well, because I end up talking about this stuff with my kids, and they're not into jargon. So like what you think you know about yourself, or the stuff that becomes, and the stuff in there that becomes really important to us, which as psychologists we would know that of that sometimes called the ego, which is often maligned as like this negative thing that's really irritating, but in fact it holds a lot of the structures, it holds a lot of the ways to play the game of the world that, you know, part of the world that you're born into.
Yes. Well, this is, well, I'll jump ahead a little bit, but this is when you're crossing the threshold, when you're about to go. So we get the call to adventure, and then we refuse the call because of fear, and then we want to cross the threshold and actually, accept that call. But it is the ego that holds us back, because ego has given us lots of identities, right? And so to confront ourselves, to go into the special world, to go onto that journey, it means kind of letting go of their identities. And that is really, really scary, because, a perfectionist, for example, someone who's got perfectionist tendency, they've got kind of either that identity or those habit of behaviors and thinking. The results are they have a high quality of work, right? And so, but it's not sustainable. They will burn out if they carry on being that perfectionist. But to answer that call and go into that adventure means leaving that identity behind, leaving those behaviors behind. And the ego will be like, no, don't do it. fear. Like, what are you without these tendencies? What's going to happen? All of that.
Is that what people mean that when, excuse me, when people will say, oh, you got to get out of your own way, or I'm in my own, like that kind of thing, like where you can simultaneously see that you're holding yourself back, but you can also at the same time, like it's a duality. When people first get that experience of duality, where you can also see a way in which those are all perhaps constructs or things you've been told, stuff you've been conditioned to believe, and then it might not actually be fundamentally true.
Yeah, that duality is just, well, you can imagine why people are scared. And I totally relate. I've been on that journey. It's because you know one world and you just don't know the other world. So who are you without your perfectionist tendencies? Someone can tell you that it's all going to be, rainbows and daisies afterwards, but you just don't know what that's like. So that is literally leaving the known world and going into the unknown world.
It's in the context of my work and in the moving beyond trauma, I think often that like the call or the event that bounces you out of what you knew or thought, the construct that you felt safe in, can often be traumatic, and that's what in an event trauma where someone, like my soldiers that lost limbs on a battlefield, for example, my clients like that. So it's very kind of easy to get your head around that suddenly they're not who they used to be, and they've got to go and enter into this whole different way of being and to learn a different way. But that's that's what a lot of people assume, that's what we mean when we talk about trauma. But actually trauma can also be, in a much wider sense, a moment where you feel overwhelmed, where it's beyond what you can cope with in body, mind and spirit. And so it's like this, so sometimes the call can be a very exciting, uplifting thing, like when Harry Potter gets his letter. Oh, he couldn't believe his luck. I mean, how, his life was horrible, and then he discovers he's a wizard. I mean, how brilliant is that? And so that's really cool. But then you're sort of holding space for people who are listening to this, who are thinking, yeah, I did kind of like my life the way it was, and I was forced to move out of it. And what life has been like since. We can really hold, like a lot of my work is helping people come to terms with, or to balance with, which might be what you're talking about, is when you reintegrate, because you've got to, at some point you come back and come to terms with who you used to be and who you are now. But maybe I'm jumping ahead.
I think we're better, but yes, no, this is all good. That's why it's so weird, but the hero's journey can't be like a linear thing. It's like But let's introduce people to kind of the steps so they know what we're talking about, because we're already banged on about the call to adventure because it's so exciting.
Yes.
Okay. So Joseph Campbell found his answers with Jung, and then he created this book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces, published it, and then actually George Lucas found it, read it, and followed all 12 steps when he wrote and directed the Star Wars. So then it got into the film world, which is why also it's so useful and so wonderful for our discussion, because we can always make these film references and people will know the steps, because it's very deeply into the film world. So pick your favorite hero film when we're thinking about this, and then you can just always kind of refer to it. But every hero, and we all do, we start in the ordinary world, step one, and that is, the hero doesn't know they're a hero. This is in the film when they're just painting the scene, the Lion King, this is their world. In every film, it's just like, this is it. There is no awareness of a need to change, nothing's gone wrong, that's the world. And then the first kind of sign for change is step two, which we've been talking about, the call to adventure, which, as you said, with Harry Potter, it comes in films, because it has to in films, it comes with like, da, 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 da. Come on, let's go on an adventure, it's all exciting, it's a lesson, better, you're a wizard, all of those kind of things. But in real life, I think it is worth discussing how that call comes, because it's not necessarily like a one-time event. It can be boredom, boredom at work. It can be being made redundant, and it can be divorce and things like that, those events, but it can just be feeling like you don't fit in. It's just, and I'm going to find a quote, which is I absolutely love Joseph Campbell, but this is a quote he says about the call to adventure. He says, "The hero's journey always begins with a call. One way or another, the guide must come to say, look, you're in sleepyland. Wake. Come on a trip. There is a whole aspect of your consciousness, your being, that's not being touched. So you're at home here. Well, there's not enough of you there. And so it starts." And I just love that quote, because it says the whole point of it, we get a call to adventure, and we might be scared, like, what's going to happen? And it's actually, there's a part of your being that is ready to be woken up, explored, and discovered. So it kind of begins.
And it's that, so that in that context, the adventure then is realizing, whatever happened to make you realize it, but at some point you suddenly think, oh, there is more to me, or more to my life, or more to something else is possible right now. Wow. Yeah.
Because a lot of my clients come because they're just not happy at work, and they don't see it as an adventure. Obviously, that's why you need an outside force to be like, hey, this is an opportunity. But at the time, they just feel like, they can have fears like, well, I just spent 15 years or 20 years building up this career and this identity, or I've got secure salary, or what's out there, what's on the other thing. So it's just they know they don't fit in, and they see, and then what they focus on is a loss. First thing they focus on is the loss of the known, loss of the securities, the safety, the titles, the status, the holidays, anything else like that. And that is when you're focusing on that, fear obviously grows. And that is kind of when I, as a coach, and anyone else who's listening to this, you can do it yourself, is to focus on the opportunity and the adventure, and the fact that you are going to be discovering aspects of you, which is huge. Very exciting.
Yeah.
So not every hero accepts the call, and refusal of the call is very common. So that's number 3. Refusal of the call comes because of fear. And so we have it, let's see, there's a lot of films where they just refuse the call. Lion King. When Simba's dad dies right at the beginning, the call is for him to step up to be king, but he is scared, and obviously he doesn't feel ready, so he runs away, and then meets Pumbaa and just kind of lives there.
I love that you say that it's that movies tend to pick the faster paced, more catchy version of this, but I love how you're drawing out the description of what it might look like in your actual life, because I certainly I identify really well with the refusal. Like, that it just feels too much, and if I just perhaps try harder to do better at the thing I was doing, or like that, and then it'll be all right. And there's sort of a sense of going, like, there's just like a mini cycle happens around that time before I eventually have reached phases in my life where I've gone, all right.
Yes, you can vacillate around it, because you can hear that call coming, but you just don't feel ready. And the good part about this is, Campbell says, like, if it's meant for you, it'll come to you. Like, it will just keep on coming. It will keep on coming. So you never really miss out on the call, but you do have to take it. And sometimes what people do is wait until they're ready, I completely agree. And so it is a it is a balance. You can't like you can't just that Instagram phrase or that quote that's like jump and the net will catch you. Like you obviously can't leave before you've got a plan or you've made something, you've spoken about it. But there is that fine balance, the fear will not go away. So so you do have to know how to overcome the fear. And that is how you become a hero. The heroes need to be challenged, and that's how they build up resilience. That's how they build up courage and bravery. There will be those moments where they ask more of you, and it, life is testing, but then it could be testing in really good ways where you really see what you're made of.
Do you find that when you're doing the sort of in the career coaching part of your portfolio, like stretch targets and growth and preparing for the next promotion or the next step or the next job, is like there's these mini cycles happen in this place as well, where you can see that something else could be possible if you kind of when you peep over the edge? And
absolutely. The hero's journey, they say, is like it's not a one journey that you do over a lifetime. You repeat it and it can be done within a day or week, it's all of that. So yes, it can definitely be repeated.
That it makes really a lot of sense to me as well from the angle of trauma-informed coaching, because we work a lot with the image of a spiral and just how we can go have the same exposure to different life experiences a number of different times. And when we're in a spiral, I've got in my head always to draw this, it's like more than 3D, it's sort of 4D because there's time as well. It's like it doesn't rely on linear time, but you can be back at a situation that you feel like you've been in already, but it's slightly different this time. There's things are slightly different. You learn different things as you kind of like a planet, it's a slingshotting around the moon again, and you go pass through this event again or some situation again. And each time you learn and develop slightly differently, there's more growth happens, or you get greater depth. But sometimes people will say to me, I'm stuck, I'm back where I started. And it's really important when in trauma-informed work to understand, no, this is a spiral. It's like it's a 3D helixy thing going on. So it sounds like this is really similar.
Yeah. And what you reminded me also is my clients for sure, and what happened to me as well when I wasn't born a coach. That was many years before I became a coach, and I was doing that with my career. I was just hopping from one job to another in different industries, changing my environment and hoping, my out environment, hoping my inner environment would change, but that didn't do it. But so I get what you mean when I kept coming back, and I'm like, that feeling isn't going away. And that feeling was like I was bored. At the beginning, I'd start a new job, a new industry. It was really exciting, and one of my strengths is love of learning, so I had to learn everything, and that was fantastic. And then when I got the lay of the land, and actually it was the same process, it's just a different company. There's still bureaucracy, there's still slow movement or things like that. I then was like, I couldn't articulate it, but I felt that there was more to me, but I just didn't know where I should go, what I should do. And I have to say, the next step 4, which is meeting the mentor, that is always what helps. You can do as much as you can. You can read, you can journal. That there is so much that you can do, but the next part always involves someone else. Now, this could be a therapist or a coach, or it could be a mentor. It could be anyone. It could be a friend, someone you spoke to, but it's a different perspective, a different point of view, and they just really help you at that time to kind of make sense of what to do next, and really give you new ideas as well, a new way of looking at yourself as well. So it was quite a key moment if anyone is stuck, to then know that as soon as you start working with someone, as soon as you don't have to do it alone, like don't be a hero, like you don't have to do it alone. As soon as you do that, then you're already getting unstuck. That's already the first step, for sure. It's just, and what I love about the hero's journey story is, that story is repeated over and over again. Every single time there is a mentor to tell you that heroes aren't made alone. That is not what happens. You will always have a mentor. There's Yoda, and in James Bond, for example, there's Q. He's very kind of straightforward because he arms you with the tools you will need. So he's very kind of straightforward and nothing like metaphorical about him, but that is also what mentor does, kind of equip you with a mentor.
I just love it, because so much of of my work, again, that connects, people find it very difficult to advocate for themselves. First of all, you've got to work out what it is you need. Then you've got to like find a way to describe it to someone else. And then you've got to advocate for yourself. So asking for help can really be a thing that completely shrinks into nothing because you're just better off on your own, is often how it can seem to people. And I just love this, that we forget always that the joy is in the helper. So the helper, the mentor, the guide, like there's so much positive psychology research and psychology research about the well-being effects of what it's like to help. But when you're the one asking for help, we seem to forget that and just be like, oh no, I've got to do it all on my own. And that's just, I love that you're really drawing that out. There's the whole element to this journey that is with help.
Yes, absolutely. It's such an important step also, what you mentioned, that learning to ask for help, because then later on, once you've crossed the threshold, and I think it was it step 6 or 7, 6. So straight after that, you have, tests and enemies and allies. And so then you have to, build a network, and you have to do that. So the first step is quite key, asking for help, approaching a stranger, or getting to know someone, trusting someone. That is a skill that you have to learn on your journey of becoming a hero. And on our life journeys, like, how much we're in a community together, but just how big are our networks when you're working, when you're self-employed, for example. The bigger your network, the less you feel alone, and the more you have people to turn to for different things, and the richer your experience is, and then you want to stay on that journey rather than go and retreat back.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's I like partly making notes for myself at this point. Okay, so why don't we draw this episode to a close around this point? So we've had the call to adventure, refused it or whatever, but eventually got going, discovered this whole world, or is possible, of what we don't know about ourselves, and then this joyful realization that there is help is provided to those who ask for it along the way. Okay, is there anything else you wanted to say to wrap up this bit?
No, just to tune in for the next bit, because it was so juicy.
Yeah, what kind of stuff can we
so it will be about, so we'll go over to the ordeal, but really we're going to focus on the road back as well. And that one will be good for marketing and storytelling, and just, anyone who's been through a transformation and is, and has experienced that euphoric bit when you get light bulbs and you transform, and then afterwards you're like, now what do I do with this? So that's what we're going to be covering.
Super. All right, thank you so much, Dina. Thank you.
Pleasure.